So as most of you guys know, I have been making a ton of videos talking about a lot of teams over the, 2025 AFL offseason. There's been a lot of ups and downs, a lot of positives and negatives about certain teams. Most likely more positives, I think, than negatives. And now I feel like I am at the team where I really don't know. I think one of the biggest question marks in 2025, maybe for me, like if you're a Port Adelaide fan, you're watching this video, you're probably thinking, you know what, we're gonna win the flag. And look, I wouldn't literally blame you, but just my thoughts and opinions, I am not exactly too sure about Port Adelaide, and I think that 2025 is going to be a year that proves that the Port Adelaide Football Club have a lot of decisions to make. Now, before I do get into what I mean by all of that and more, there's still a decent amount of you guys who watch today's videos who are not yet subscribed to the channel. So if you do me a massive favor and leave a like on this video to let me know you guys enjoy it, subscribe to the channel for all those AFL content news. And I guess without further ado, we'll get into my thoughts and opinions on the Port Adelaide Football Club, because I genuinely think they're in such a weird spot. They are in such a weird spot. Like, first and foremost, it's their coach's last year. And typically when a coach knows it's his last year and he's going to get replaced, it doesn't always work. Again, we saw a couple of examples of all of that. You know, when Essendon had their succession plan and they moved on from Worsfold to Ben Rutten, it was a weird situation, to say the least. The club looked to be in a really weird spot and it didn't work at all. And then again, if you want to use that as another example for Essendon, when I think Ben Rutten kind of knew that his job was about to be over and he was about to be replaced by a new coach, which was being said to be Brad Scott at the time, there also seemed like a weird replacement plan there and he wasn't, too happy with it, and they obviously started losing games. The productivity really went down. And I am kind of scared for, I think, Port Adelaide, that this could be a similar situation where Ken Inkley, he's going into this season, he could be just thinking, look, I'm going to try and get the absolute best out of my boys. But when a couple games happen where they start to lose, it usually goes on a slide from there, and the coach will always be like, well, I'm being replaced anyway, so I've got nothing to lose. This and that. Sometimes, again, that could be a good thing. Maybe he tried to just pull shit out of his asshole and Port Adelaide go on and win some games. But having a bit of the succession plan like Port Adelaide have right now never usually does good for the last season of the coach's, time at the club. And I think that will be a really weird thing and an interesting thing to watch. Again, another thing I think about Port Adelaide is I believe they have by far one of the best midfields in the game. If not, some people would probably consider it the best, as well as I think actually having not the worst depth in the league. I think there's actually a pretty good depth going on right there at Port Adelaide. The issues are, even though they've got depth, there's no standouts that you can pick from in, I think, their forward line and back line. Again, I know a lot of people are really hyped about their off-season where they were able to bring in some forwards to help out what they had this season. They obviously brought in Lukosius and Joe Richards. But as you guys who have been watching the channel know for quite a while, and I think Port Adelaide fans might find out pretty soon, Jack Lukosius is an absolute mixed bag. It's like, in my opinion, getting a freaking box of favorites and I get like a normal dairy milk, and I'm like, as a fat kid, I'm like, fuck yeah, that's insane. And then I pull out a cherry ripe and I throw it at my best mate who's sitting next to me, and I look at him and I'm like, what the fuck is this? I don't want this shit. And I just force him to eat it. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have friends like me, but that's what I do. But that's what you get out of Jack Lukosius' game. You got a time where you're going to have Jack Lukosius play on a average defender where he's probably going to kick about 3 or 4 on the guy's head. But then if Jack Lukosius goes and plays on a seriously tough defender like a Stephen May, who's going to give him a tough time, he absolutely plays like shit most of the time and really looks weak in the contest and just doesn't look any good. Again, that's the whole reason I think Dimmer shipped him out, is because Damien Hardwick has been notorious for not liking weak players and, you know, moving on from them. Of course, he moved on from Marbia Chol pretty much as soon as he got to Gold Coast. He's moved on from Jack Lukosius. A lot of those weaker forwards who aren't good in a contested marking situation or will just get bodied easily, yeah, they're no good most of the time when the tough comes around, and I think Lukosius is like that. Joe Richards, again, I think is a very good player and I think could develop into being a star. But again, it's still probably a little bit of ways, and we got to just calm down for a second on that. I still think their forward line needs a lot of work, and unfortunately Marshall just did his Achilles, so he won't be playing this year. I think Ollie Lord has had some injury issues, so has Georgiadis. Yeah, if you have Lukosius as your number one key forward, you're in a lot of trouble. And having good small forwards around him like Willie Rioli and, you know, of course, Richards won't do anything. He's not going to bring the ball down to the ground for them to crumb and work their magic. So their forward line is, yeah, it's not great for me. Their back line, though, is very interesting. There's some great parts about their back line. I still think Alir, though, at times works better as a second key defender. And I think they tried to bring Radagalier in to be that main key defender. Didn't work out, so they moved him as like a forward again. They wanted Radagalier to be that one-on-one contested guy and have Alir as the interceptor. It didn't really work. But again, you got Jace Burgoyne down there, who a lot of people think Dan Houston is a massive loss for Port. And look, he probably is. That is a huge loss. He's a great player and arguably sometimes their best player. But I think if Jace Burgoyne is going to play us that half-back, and we saw what he can do in finals, yeah, they're still set off the half-back line. Ryan Burton's still there, who's actually a decent player as well. There's still some good stuff going on there. They just so desperately need to find that number one key forward to have Alir as like the interceptor, and they just can't. It's the same thing at Collingwood. They need to find that number one key so Moore can be the interceptor, and they can't at the moment either. Yeah, it's a weird situation. So, I don't know how Port are going to go this year. After everything I said, did their list really get worse? Well, in my opinion, a tiny bit, because I think Dan Houston was a big loss. Burgoyne will replace him and do decent at it. But they've lost Marshall now. Lukosius is weak as piss, and I don't rate him as a player. Shout out Jack Lukosius. I'm sure you're good at Fortnite or something, but I probably back myself in as a 5'8" chubby fat kid to beat you in a one-on-one marking contest. Again, there are other key forwards that have injury issues. There is some scares for me there, but their midfield is so good, man. Like, yeah, I have a feeling like they might even just continue to top up this midfield and say to Horn Francis, look, you're probably going to have to play like 50% up forward next year because we have a lot of issues up forward and we got all the midfielders in the world. Even Boak still puts in a good effort. You might actually have to see that happen, and yeah, it's a weird situation with Port Adelaide's forward line right now that does kind of worry me a little bit. So, yeah, Port Adelaide have a lot of decisions to make. Where are they at? And we'll see that in 2025. They will make these decisions on where they are at when we find out what they're doing, because we don't know if they're going to be good under Ken Hinkley. We don't even know if Ken Hinkley, how that whole succession plan is going to work. We don't know how their forward line is going to operate next season. It just continues to get worse, and I don't think Lukosius is going to help at all, and yeah, that's tough. Again, we'll see how Dan Houston, how he's going, and all that type of stuff now that he's not there. And so yeah, we'll obviously see the effects of Dan Houston and how his leaving will make, for it, but there'll be decisions that get made. I don't think that, if they have a bad-ish year, which could happen, I don't think they'll go on a rebuild. They have such an elite midfield. You just got to put a good forward line and back line, consistent forward line and back line with them, with now the new coach in 2026. Or they could go into 2025 being a good team that makes finals and does well, where they'll probably just continue to add bits and pieces here and there. Yeah, they're in a weird situation. They will have decisions to make depending how their season goes. And I'm all for it. I'm interested to see how it goes myself. But again, if you haven't already, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for all that AFL content, sports content, and more. Don't forget to, again, leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, comment your thoughts and opinions on this all down below. Subscribe to my gaming channels and my IRL/vlog channels. Links for them will also be in the description down below. And I guess I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.